Hey everyone, just before we get started this week, just wanted to record a short trigger warning for the content we're going to discuss in this episode. We're going to be talking a lot about women's issues, including rape, abuse, sexual assault, violence against women. If that would make you feel uncomfortable, please do not feel pressured to listen. I've recorded this specifically so you have time to stop listening before we get into it. The first 8 minutes or so is an introduction I put together, kind of setting the scene for why we've chosen to focus on women's rights. Again, this could prove triggering for some people, and if so, you might want to skip forward 8 minutes if you're wanting to listen to the rest of the podcast. Thank you so much. I found it a really useful experience to make this podcast, and I'm really glad that we've got the opportunity to share it with you.
And the Duchess had been denied help when she felt suicidal.
I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion.
Meghan said she had had suicidal thoughts, but it had been refused help.
But again, do you know what? It's their lived experience, and...
No, it's not true.
Well, look, Piers, it's their lived experience, and...
Meghan spoke of weeping by Harry's side as the lights went down at the Royal Albert Hall in London.
I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth.
And misery so great, she contemplated taking her own life.
But I just want you also to be aware of the power of your words.
Pounded by the popular newspapers, depressed by her lack of freedom, Meghan said she had repeatedly turned to the palace for help.
Mental illness and suicide, these are clearly extremely serious things that should be taken extremely seriously. And if somebody is feeling that way, they should get the treatment and the help that they need.
But none was forthcoming. She contemplated harming herself or taking her own life.
I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth.
Lies were spread about her in the press, she said, but she was told that nothing could be done.
I don't care about her feelings
Okay,
if
but
the
what
fact is
concerns
wrong.
me...
Sarah Everard, a marketing executive who was 33, was last seen walking along a main road in Clapham in South London 9 days ago, having left a friend's house. Her family described her as kind and caring and a shining example to others. The Metropolitan Police are themselves the subject of 5 linked lines of inquiry by the police watchdog, the Independent Office of Police Conduct. One of them is an accusation that Wayne Couzens exposed himself indecently on 2 occasions at a South London fast food restaurant just days before Miss Everard went missing.
Sarah Everard's death has led to calls for investigate how Scotland Yard handled an allegation of indecent exposure made against the officer suspected of murdering Sarah Everard. The Metropolitan Police are to face an investigation into whether they responded properly to a claim of indecent exposure involving the officer who is a suspect in the Sarah Everard case. Ms Everard, who was 33, disappeared last week while walking home in South London. An officer who works in parliamentary and diplomatic protection is being held on
said
suspicion
that their
of
officer in custody is under arrest on suspicion of kidnap and murder, as well as a separate allegation of indecent exposure. Tonight, it emerged that this refers to a report that a man exposed himself at a fast food restaurant in South London a few days before Sarah Everard disappeared. The police watchdog announced that they are now investigating whether 2 officers responded appropriately. The case was referred to them by the Met Police.
I totally understand why this has triggered such a wave
The
of feeling.
explanatory notes of the bill don't mention women once, but they do mention statues.
On the issue of safety of women and safety of the streets.
You currently can get more for fly tipping than you can get for stalking.
And I want to echo very much what Priti Patel said, which is that no woman should walk our streets.
Women don't matter as much as cars, we don't matter as much as fly tipping, we don't matter as much as statues, and the law needs to change
Every woman should feel able to walk our streets in safety.
Earlier, the force released a tribute to Sarah Everard from her family. They described her as bright and beautiful, a wonderful daughter and sister, and they appealed for additional help
The body
from
found
the public.
hidden in woodland near Ashford in Kent was that of Sarah Everard, a marketing executive who was 33.
Everyone should feel able
was
to walk our
last seen
streets
walking along
in
Main Road in
safety.
Clapham in South London 9 days ago, Woodland near Ashford in Kent.
Sarah Everard.
Sarah Everard, a marketing executive who was 33. Sarah Everard, 33. A marketing executive who was 33.
They described her as bright
Was
and
that a
beautiful,
Sarah
a
Everard?
wonderful daughter and sister, Sarah Everard, and they appealed for additional help from the
Sarah
public.
Everard, a marketing executive who was 33.
She said that, but he didn't, did he?
Listen, stop separating Harry and Meghan. You are
Okay,
struggling.
guys, if we're going to have this conversation...
You've got to let me talk. She said that. Got to let me talk.
I believe in freedom of speech.
Got to let me talk.
I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion.
Got to let me talk. She said that.
Yet you continue to trash her.
Okay, I'm done with this.
No.
Sorry, no. Sorry.
So, do you know what? That's
You
pathetic.
can trash her, mate, but not my...
No.
See you later.
I'm being...
And speak about their own struggles with mental health and tell their own personal story. That takes courage.
Sorry, can't
This
do
is
this.
absolutely diabolical behaviour.
Lies were spread about her in the press, she
You
said,
can't
but she was
muck
told
around
that
with
nothing
facts.
could be done.
She got the facts wrong on that. It's been
Lies
demonstrated
were spread
today in
about
every
her.
paper. Got
That
to let me
fact
talk.
is simply untrue.
She said that.
Was that a Sarah Everard, a marketing
She said that.
executive
Sarah
who was
Everard.
33?
Every woman
Got to let me talk.
should feel able
Was
to walk our
last seen
streets
walking along Main
in
Road in
safety.
Clapham in South London 9 days ago, Woodland near Ashford in
I
Kent.
don't
Sarah
believe
Everard,
almost anything that
a
comes out of her
marketing
mouth.
executive
Every
who
woman
was
should
33.
feel
She
able to
said
walk
that.
our streets
Sarah
in
Everard,
safety.
a marketing
From her
executive
family.
who was
They
33.
described her as
Was
bright
that a
and
Sarah
beautiful,
Everard?
a wonderful daughter
Sarah
and
Everard.
sister,
Got to let me talk.
and they appealed for additional help
Sarah
from the public.
Everard, a marketing executive who was 33.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said that men needed to understand and speak out too. He said there should be changes in both attitudes and in the law.
New message 1.
We were talking about doing the racism and sexism in the music industry. I was wondering what you thought about doing a kind of, I don't know, like focusing on women and how there's still a lot to do. I don't know, I feel like I've seen a lot about women being scared and a lot of stuff about women being mistreated and being scared of like, walking alone or stuff, you know what I mean? I'm explaining really badly, but I thought maybe we could, for episode 10, it could be the right time to talk about that. I didn't know if there was, like, maybe, if you want, we could have another guest on, like, I don't know. Like, for some reason I have Katie in my mind. It would be good. I think it would be interesting to hear your experiences and your thoughts, and also it would probably kind of educate me a bit, which is always important. I don't know, it's up to you. I mean, we can do it another time. I just feel like with everything that's going on with the Sarah Everard stuff and her being murdered by the police officer, it feels like it's kind of an opportunity to say something now. Also, sorry that my voice sounds horrible. Lol.
New message 2.
Okay, I think you're right. I think it would be a good time, especially with the Meghan Markle stuff as well. That's two big things as to why to talk about women at the moment. Hey guys, I'm waving to we are back with episode 10 of the World to Rights podcast, and if you are viewing on YouTube, you'll be able to see that we have a special guest with us, Miss Katie Kitchen. Katie has been one of my best friends for 6-7 years now, and she's always inspired me because she's always been a very proud feminist and spoke about women's rights and pointed out a lot of stuff way before it had media attention, because she's just that smart. So we thought we would have her on our podcast so she can share her thoughts with you guys. As you guys might know, this week we're going to be focusing on women's rights, women's safety, all things women, and hopefully giving Chris a bit of insight as to what it's like to be a woman in today's society, and to any other men who are listening, because Chris is very actually well educated on the topic, even if he pretend
I'm
not
not
to
sure.
be.
Look, I feel like no matter how educated we are, we can probably do better. Like, good enough is not good enough in my mind. I don't think that's a place
Yeah.
to stop. I think that's like a starting point, and you should be doing that every day, forever.
Yeah. That makes me happy to hear you say that.
It's really nice.
And it's good that we picked
You
a
are.
time where there's definitely not much going on with women's issues. You know,
Oh,
it's
yes.
really calm.
Nothing
There's
going
no
on at the
issues
moment.
whatsoever.
Totally relaxed.
Fuck.
I'm not stressed at all.
Yeah, it's a hard. In all seriousness, this is not the week to not be able to speak. In all seriousness, it has been a challenging time, and I think, Katie was sort of mentioning earlier, before we started recording, that it has been a tough week just hearing things going on. I know from being on TikTok, I've seen a lot of men saying not all men, and not all men are bad, and yes, we know not all men are bad, but even the good men mess up sometimes as well, and it's good that we can try and find a way of helping raise awareness to things that men might not realise they're doing that makes women uncomfortable. And
from my side,
yeah.
I've spent the week talking to a lot of women in my life, like close to me, and people I really respect and look up to, and I've heard a lot of their stories that are, it's worrying how many there are, and they're worrying how similar they are. A lot of them have the same themes running through them, and it's like, it's bad enough that this shit happens once, but this is happening enough that there is a deeper issue. I don't think you could listen to that and think that it's just a one-off thing. I am more convinced than ever that there's a real issue that needs to be dealt with, because no one should have to face some of the things I've heard ever, and far too many people that I love and respect, and all women generally have had to go through. No one should have to deal with that.
I think one of the big issues at the moment is that women don't even realise a lot of the discrimination they face, because it's so ingrained and so normalised that it takes a moment, or it takes people pointing out behaviour that isn't right. And I've seen people say, oh, I didn't realise, like women say, I didn't realise I was in the 97%, and then realising because they didn't think catcalling or people asking for nudes and asking them if they would date them more than once when they've said no is harassment.
Yeah.
That's a really good
Yeah.
place to start. And can I just say to any men listening, if right now you're feeling like writing not all men, I'd like you to step away from your keyboard, look in the mirror, and decide whether you're happy living with that person, because you need to change your attitude pretty damn quickly. This stuff is serious, and not all men is not an appropriate way to respond. So fix up. Also, yeah, could we start? So 97% was it this week that came out? This week is when I've really seen the 97%, although I'm sure that it's been around longer than that. And I wondered what you guys thought when you saw that.
And to be honest, I think it's probably more like 100. 3%. Unless that's people women who are bedbound, who never leave the house, I can't understand that it isn't 100%. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised at all that it was so high, to be honest. Obviously, it's sad to see, but I know a lot of the men in my life are really shocked at that statistic. But for me, it's kind of I don't think I know a single woman in my life who hasn't been assaulted at some point. And I think the definition of assault is something that we've become more aware of over recent years. I think a lot of people tend to think, oh, I haven't been raped, I haven't been beaten up, therefore I'm not part of that percentage. When in reality, just because somebody is not overtly sneaking around with a dodgy tash and a sort of classic scary vibe doesn't mean they're not somebody who could assault you or could rape you, and so many people have had these more sort of, I guess, microaggressions in their life that do actually have a big impact on you.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the word rape as well is another thing that it's such an ugly word for a reason, but what happens is men think, oh no, I couldn't be a rapist, I couldn't have raped someone, when in fact, you know, it, like you said, you're not a big, you don't have to be a massive man with tattoos and facial hair down back alley. It can be, you know, a loving boyfriend seemingly who's taken advantage when, you know, the girlfriend's drunk, or, you know, it's and, you know, people wouldn't want to say rape. They would want to say, oh, there was a lack of consent, or they try and avoid the word. I think that's another thing. It's just like, rapists might not always be your typical bad guy. They can be your friendly.
I think that's why I think the whole not all men argument is so strange to me, because at 97% of women experiencing something like that, like, yes, not all men perpetrate that sort of thing, obviously, but nearly all women have experienced that sort of thing. With statistics that high, it is enough to make you be reasonably wary of all men. Like, you just have to be. You know, if you're walking down the street at night, you see a man, you cross the road. You know, and yes, that particular man might be okay, but you can't take that risk.
Of course. And I was sort of asking people on Instagram what are some of the examples they felt like they've learnt growing up because they're a girl and because they're a woman, in comparison to like what boys are taught growing up. And some of the answers were talking about, you know, I'm taught not to walk alone, I'm taught to walk in groups, I'm taught to not go out at night, and like stuff like that, which is just, we take that for granted, I guess. We just you know, think that, to be honest, I think that, I guess I thought that boys were also taught, well, don't leave the house unless you're in groups and walk by yourself. Chris, were you taught anything like that?
Not really, not from that. I think anything I was told in that respect was less because it was more a racism kind of issue more than anything else. But even when I look at how the things that I was told versus my sister, it is different. It is definitely more focused on making sure you're not alone at all. Whereas if I'm to say, oh, I'm on my way home, it wouldn't really be a problem. You know, if I was to say, oh, I'm cycling back for my friends tonight, fine, cool. If my sister said it, it would probably be like, do you want us to come pick you up? Do you want us to come get you? Are you with anyone? And it's like, it's not nice when you realise that, because it's, you know, again, it's not right. Like, you shouldn't have to have that extra level of fear.
Another, just one that popped into my mind was, like, whenever I went to have like sleepovers when I was younger, I'd always be asked, oh, are there going to be any boys there? When you asked to go to sleepovers, Chris, was there any like a question of, oh, are there any girls there?
No.
Like, or was it just like
never?
Katie, did you find you asked if there were boys
there?
there?
Oh yeah, every time it was like, if there's like, I would not be allowed to go to a sleepover if there were going to be boys there. Like, hell no.
Yeah, you know? Exactly.
Yeah.
Which, for me, I've, you know, obviously, before I moved to my second secondary school, all my friends were mostly boys, pretty much. So, you know, it was sort of like weird to me. Oh, well, you know, they're just my mates. They would never do anything like that. Yeah. So, but it's right, though, that women are taught that, because you don't know what's going to happen, I guess. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think women should be taught to like, when they're like, girls should be taught not to go to sleepovers if boys are there? Do you think that's a reasonable precaution?
I don't know. I think there's kind of like two different reasons why parents say that as well, isn't there? There's the obvious sort of safety point of view and the distrust of teenage boys, which I think is valid, just from, you know, I've heard stories from, you know, I won't go into detail, but from my friends who've had sleepovers with boys and been made to feel really uncomfortable. But there's also just, I think it's quite normal for a lot of parents to be a bit overprotective of sort of like, oh, I don't want any funny business, you know, you shouldn't have a boyfriend until you're this old and that sort of thing. I think that's, there's that as well. So I think, honestly, I think it's kind of fair that girls are told not to go to sleepovers with boys, I think for both reasons. The thing that's kind of more prominent to me is it's not just then, it's like it's always that women, when you're growing up, you're taught to regulate your behaviour rather than guys being taught to regulate theirs. As in, like, dress codes at school, you know, being told by boyfriends, I don't think you should wear this short skirt because my friends have commented on it. You know, things like that. It always seems to be the woman's problem, and the women's problem to change themselves in order to prevent men from being awful, which is a shame.
I think something I've always thought is that there's a real issue with so I remember back in episode 5, when we had Piers and Sadie on, we talked about the issue of periods and how even then the boys are taken out of the room and we're sent to go and play football or something, or do something like that, and the girls taken to talk about periods, and it's like, that's a really stupid division to make, to kind of almost like protect them, like, oh, it's not your issue, don't worry about it, don't worry, it's their issue to deal with. And it's like, well, that's just stupid from the beginning. But it's that all the way through, you know, that I feel like as a man, so my parents and living with my sister, I've over the years kind of learned things and been told to do things like, you know, if you're walking behind a woman late at night, cross over to the other side of the road. Don't keep walking up behind her. Just cross over to the other side of the road. And like things like that. Like my mum told me once, you know, maybe stop for a bit. Stop and like just let her go on ahead, so that she sees there's distance between you rather than you closing the gap, because it can feel like you're chasing her. And I was like, yeah, that's a fair enough point. And I've taken it, and I try to do that always at uni and stuff. When it's happened, I've been walking back from things. I think you could watch me from like a helicopter and you just see me zigzagging from one side of the street to the other. And I don't care about, like, I'm fine with that. I was cool with that. Like, it's fine. But I felt it was fine because I knew that from my position, just as a human being, you know, you don't want someone coming up behind you in the dark when you can't see them. And knowing that women were being told that, you know, that's a state where they could be vulnerable, I was like, I don't want to make that any worse. So it's a very small thing for me to do, to be like, look, I'm going to just make sure that situation doesn't arise in the first place. I'll cross over to the other side of the street.
I find it really interesting that you were taught that, because I don't think there are, I mean, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think many boys are taught to do that.
I think it's from the sense of just trying to be I think my parents just always tried to raise me to be a good person, full stop. Which, that sounds like I'm saying that people who weren't told this have been raised as badly. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
but like,
yeah.
My parents, they were always very focused on trying to make sure that I picked up the behaviours that were going to make people feel comfortable rather than uncomfortable. So I don't just walk into a room and say something really that has the potential to offend people, because I know in my mind, if there's someone in the room who could be offended by a joke, I kind of think, maybe I won't make that joke, you know? I just won't say that, because I don't need to say it. I might have the freedom to say it, but actually there's no need for it, so I'm not going to do that. And it's things like that. So I think it's just trying to be a considerate person. I think part of my personality is someone who's quite sensitive and gets, you know, personally spends maybe too much time worrying about how other people feel, is that I'm just very conscious of that always, and will try and do something that limits my impact on someone else, in a sense. I'd rather make sure that my impact is really limited than do something which, without knowing, is really impacting someone negatively.
Yeah.
But
I think
that makes sense.
If everyone were like you, Chris, I think the world would be a much calmer and nicer place. So thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the world would be. I think we'd have different problems in the world, but like, I just wondered if there was a story I could share with you. And I hate the fact that I'm like talking so much. I will try and shut up in a minute. But it was a story I I think my sister shared it to me from a few years ago. And it's by, do you know the actor Jamie Dornan?
No.
Yeah.
He was in 50 Shades of Grey, I want to say. Yeah, and The Fool.
Is he the main guy in it?
Possibly. I don't really know, I have to be honest. But so it's from 2015, and I'm not saying it because I'm like, guys, let's go cancel this person. It's just something that it surprised me that someone could say this openly. But okay, so basically the story was that he admitted that he stalked a woman on the London Underground because he wanted to prepare for a role in The Fool, playing a psychopath, a serial killer. And so he explained, and this is his words. So he, in his mindset, he was like, can we get arrested for this? This is a really bad reveal. I followed a woman off the train one day to see what it felt like to pursue someone like that. I really kept my distance. She got off a few stops earlier than I was planning, so I said, right, I have to commit to this. I followed her around a couple of street corners and then was like, what are you doing? It felt kind of exciting in a really sort of dirty way. I'm sort of not proud of myself, but I do honestly think I learned something from it. And it's like,
Trash.
I don't know. It's weird. It's weird that you... okay, so and he obviously says, I'm not proud of it. It wasn't right. I knew it was wrong. But it's like, there's a step too far, right? Like, okay, as an actor, you're trying to get into that's not okay. There are some lines you do not cross as a person. And that felt like one of them. Like, literally admitting to a national newspaper, oh, I stalked a woman off a train. All I could think was, this poor woman has become part of you trying to do something.
And you don't know
like
her
that.
history either. She could have been raped, anything in the past. That could have been really upsetting and triggering.
I thought that was so horrible. And the worst thing about it, I felt, was that it was, it was this woman. Like, we don't know anything about, I don't know anything about her. She is just a woman, and I know everything about this guy. And I was like, I don't really care what you did and how you felt in this situation, because you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have been doing that to get into that role.
A while ago.
This poor, it made me feel sick, to be honest. I read it and I was like, I think it really sparked me to try and make sure I was learning more, because I was just like, you know this is wrong, right? You know that that's too far, surely.
Yeah, so gross. Like, just not thinking at all about how she would feel, and the whole being like, oh, I was feeling this, I was thinking this. And, like, that's like a woman's worst nightmare. Like, you're on a train.
Yeah.
Women, especially on the underground at night as well, like, you'd be thinking, like, you have to have your wits about you when you're travelling as a woman. You're constantly thinking, like, oh,
and you
this
always have
person's sitting a bit close
anxiety
to
as
me.
well.
Yeah, like, oh, this person got off the same stop as me. Oh, now they're walking the same way as me. I hope nothing's going on. And that's that's your worst nightmare as a woman, to be have to be paranoid and, like, the feeling that someone's following you and have to think about that.
It was just weird because obviously, I was saying, I had the opposite thing of being told, don't do that to a woman. And I was like, hang on, so you're doing this thing which I know in my mind is so wrong on a ridiculous number of levels. Like, it would never occur to me if I was trying to get into that role. Okay, so what I should do here is I should get off and follow this woman. That is the most... Where do you get that thought from?
That's like, oh, I'm playing a murderer, so maybe I'll murder someone.
Yeah, it's like, see how it makes me feel.
You don't need to do that. It's not worth it. No.
If you're a good enough actor, you can do that without
harassing some poor woman on the underground. Yeah,
and it's not. Again, I'm not. I know that people are going to get angry and be like, "Oh, you're trying to." I'm not trying to get into cancel culture or anything, but it's the behavior. It's the underlying behavior, and the way he was able to describe that.
Yeah,
is like, there's an issue there. That's what I'd really like to challenge, to be like, that's wrong, right?
I mean, don't apologise for bringing that up, saying you're worried about cancel culture. Like, I think something like that shows a lot about someone's mindset. And if I knew, for example, Chris, I know obviously you at Birmingham Uni too, a fellow alumni. There's a load of Facebook pages for people at the uni of sort of like confessions pages. So one's called like Brumfest. And there was a post on there recently, which was basically someone saying, like, I'm a man and I just want to admit this. I sometimes like to, if I'm walking behind a woman at night, I'll sometimes speed up just to like see their reaction. Like, I know I'm a good person and I'd never really hurt them, but it does give me a thrill to know that I'm freaking them out a bit and that I have that power over them. And it's a similar thing. Like, that's just disgusting. It shows so much about your mindset.
That could hurt them. Like, he's
Yeah.
saying,
And
I'm a
that-
good person, I would never hurt them, trying to justify his own behaviours, and then the same breath saying, yeah, I did it because it made me feel good. It's like, you're putting your own weird, strange, perverted thrill above the safety of this woman, and, like, you infringing on her safety is hurting her. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with that?
That does
person?
actually answer something for me though, which is often we wonder why men do stuff. Like, I mean, that doesn't answer the whole side of it, but a few months ago, Pierce and I had an argument, and we were on a walk or a bike. We were on a bike ride, and so I decided to like go home, and so I was like a couple of minutes ahead of him. We weren't like completely separated or whatever, but the two men, and this is like 2 roads away from my road, slowed down and beeped their horns at me, like pretty much within a few minutes of each other. And I was like, shit, Pierce, if we ever argue now, like we can't like leave each other when we're not. And that means like, that feels really humiliating for me. I can't walk off if I'm pissed off. Like, I have to be with him, even if, like, you know what I mean?
You've
like,
lost some freedom there.
Yeah,
like, you
exactly.
can't operate as your own individual human being. You have to be with someone else so that you feel safe. That's disgusting.
Yeah. And even when I've needed to, you know, because we're in lockdown and everything, and I'm quite isolated where I live, if I ever need to go on a walk to sort of let off some steam or just get out the house, there's always a fear of, you know, well, I am by myself on quiet roads in the middle of nowhere, and you know, you don't know what can happen, and his parents don't like me going out, and Piers doesn't really like me going out either, so it is quite like difficult.
And it's interesting, I remember you saying something, I think I might have seen it on your Instagram, or maybe we spoke about it, about so I was thinking about being back at uni, and you know, I'd obviously like go to my friend's house and things, and you know, maybe I'd leave like midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever, like we'd have a good time. And I just leave and put my headphones in, turn my music up and walk. And I did that every single time, and I never felt, you know, I felt fine doing that. And I remember you saying that was something you didn't feel like you could do because of the safety thing. I was like,
oh, yeah.
It's just one of those moments when you realize, I think I realized, and again, this is going to trigger some people, but I don't really care. It's the privilege in there about it's the fact that I have that privilege that I can just walk around with my headphones in and not actually it doesn't occur to me that I might have lost some kind of safety in there. I just think, well, it's fine. I'm walking, I'm going to be fine. Nothing is going to happen to me. And it's just there. I just feel that. And to put myself, or to try and put myself in your shoes and think, imagining what it would be like if I felt like I couldn't do that. It's crazy, and I'd never really. I feel, again, it was one of those wake up calls for me. In that I know that you guys say, oh, you know, I wish people were more like you, but it was one of those things that there are things like that I never realized, and I was like, wow, okay, yeah, that's a privilege that I have that lots of women don't have.
Have you ever
okay.
pretended that you were on the foot? Like Katie would have done it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Most women do it. Pretend that you're on the phone to someone just so that not like you know that this person isn't gonna like kidnap you or do something because they think you've got someone on the phone.
I've never had to do that. I've never had to felt like I had to do that. But yeah. I know that on the flip side of that, I know that people I lived with, especially in first, second year, who would go to work in Birmingham city centre and come back maybe like midnight, whatever, on the train. They would be like, oh, can I call you on my way back from the station? And I'd be like, yes, that's fine. I can understand. Because I knew that what they were saying was, it's not that they particularly wanted to talk to me. It was more they.
Oh yeah.
not
of course,
like,
yeah.
I actually hate you, but I just want no. It was like I could understand that they were doing it from that safety perspective of being on the phone to someone, so that they would deter anyone from trying to do anything, and if something did happen, obviously I'd know about it. And I was just like, it's so weird. I don't have to. Not even weird. It's just wrong that I can go about my life and never have to justify. Oh, I'm leaving my friends. Like I don't have to message my parents, but like I'm leaving my friend's house now. It should take me X amount of time to get home. I don't have to do that, but I know women do have to do that.
Yeah,
and it's those kind of privileges that men don't realize that we have. Men are going around thinking, "Oh, I don't have any privilege." That is a privilege that we have as men. We need to get that in our heads. That is a privilege. If you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh, I don't have any privilege," there are so many examples like that of privilege that we hold that women don't have.
Yeah, and it can be a bit more complicated. Like I remember being told that actually if you're on the phone, that can be dangerous as well because you're not paying attention to your surroundings. So I've been told, okay, well, like text someone to let them know where you are, but then be aware. So if you need to run or whatever, that you can do that without being distracted. And I remember thinking, okay, well, I'll have one earphone in for the call and then the other earphone out so that I'm still aware, or stuff like that, which again is
that's so ridiculous because you're being told, okay, so you need to tell people where you are, and so you should like pretend to be on the phone, but don't pretend to be on the phone because then that will put you in a position of not being safe. Maybe actually be on the phone because then you'll be able to talk to someone, but also don't do that because you'll be losing awareness. So you like have an earphone in, but also don't have earphones in because it's like, no, you can't tell people these because all of these things. But I feel anxious about this because there's so many like do this but not this, do this but not this.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes my anxiety rise. Fuck's sake, I don't have to actually do any of this. You guys do, and I'm like, I don't think I'd be able to leave the house. I don't think I'd be able to do anything because I'd be living in constant fear, and I hate that. That's so wrong to me as a human being that any other human being ever has to think about all these different things. It's like, no, that's not okay. That's not right.
And sort of slightly going back to men not realizing that they're doing anything wrong because they're not raping anyone, but still causing problems. I've thought about it a lot over the last couple of years because at the time I didn't think much of it, but I went to a gig by myself in London, and it wasn't long after some of the terrorist attacks, and everyone was quite nervous about me going by myself and stuff, but I was like, my attitude was, for all I know I could be hit by a bus down my lane, so I might as well enjoy my life, and who cares. I've got a bit of slightly different attitude to that now. I'm a bit more careful, but I wanted to go to this gig, and it was a person I was desperate to see for ages and hadn't had a chance, so I decided to go. And this man who is in his mid-30s, only a few years younger than my only a few years younger than my dad, was decided to he sort of stood behind me and he tapped me on the shoulder and was like, my camera quality is much better than yours, would you let me send you some better footage and you can have my videos? And I sort of felt a bit awkward, and he sort of had his hand out to take my phone, and I was thinking, he could take my phone right now and run off for all I know, but I felt nervous, so I just sort of let him do it. And then he said, "Oh, let me buy you a drink," and I was thinking, it's £6 a pint here, sure. you can buy me a drink. And then he wanted to introduce me to his friends, and I just remember him. None of this was particularly bad. It wasn't great because I didn't feel very comfortable. And I did point out to him that he was only a couple of years younger than my dad, and that didn't put him off, which you'd like to think it would put off someone. But anyway, I said to him, he said, "Oh, I've got to get my train. It's my last train. If I don't leave now, I'll miss." And I was like, "Oh, okay, bye then." Like we'd had there was no contact and stuff. And he goes, "Oh, you're going that way too, though. Like, why didn't you come with me? I wouldn't want you being, walking there by yourself. I was like, I walked here from the station by myself. I'm fine. I've got friends in London in case, I need to contact them or stay at theirs or anything like that. And he was, oh, I really think you should come with me though. And he kept saying it and kept saying it. And he's like, oh, I'm going to miss my train. I was like, then go then, like you. And I think this guy, if I'm honest, I think he just wanted to have a cheeky little kiss. But that's not what I wanted. And the other thing was, he made me feel really uncomfortable. And I was considering going to an after party there. And then after that, I thought, actually, I just want to go home. I don't want anything to happen. And then he had my number from sending the photos, because he took my number from my phone. And then he kept messaging me. And nothing, creepy, nothing like nasty, but just, I was thinking, oh God, like this guy, it's a bit uncomfortable, and I ended up blocking him. And then I felt guilty because I blocked him. But, that's just sort of an example of how saying he didn't do anything wrong, let's say, but he just made me uncomfortable.
Can I share a story from one of my friends? So while you were telling that story, I was like, even as I said, like, there's something that just in my stomach, I was like, this is horrible. Like a similar kind of story in some ways. So I'm just gonna read it out as it is, because it feels better that way. It is, like, I'm not saying who it is, and I don't think there's anything identifiable in there, so that feels good to me. So when I was 17 and walking home from school, this guy, complete stranger, came up to me and kept talking, and I did not want to talk to him. I was fucking terrified, but he wouldn't leave me alone, so I started talking to him. And then he followed me around the shopping centre, and I was just trying to buy some mouthwash, And then he was very persistent and asking for a date, and I said no. He kept asking, and again, I was terrified, so I agreed, and I was like, it's fine, I won't turn up. Then he asked for my number, and obviously I fake numbered him. But then he checked immediately and called my phone, so I had to real number him so that he'd leave me alone. Then he wouldn't stop texting me, and the day we were meant to have our date, I cancelled. And he called me a bitch and a slut, and he hoped that I died. He recognised my school uniform though, so for the rest of the school year, I was scared of getting murdered on the way home. Also, he knew I was 17 and he was 23.
Oh my God. Poor girl.
I was just like,
so scary.
So scary.
Me. What went through his fucking mind that he was like...
In a school uniform as well.
Like, there's so many red flags in that. There's so many things that should have been, to him, he should have been like, I shouldn't do this. The first of all being, it's a complete stranger. Maybe you don't just go up to them and start talking to them. She was in her school uniform. Don't do that, especially if, like, he was 23. Don't do that. And, like, I can't. Like, the more I read this, I actually had to... Well, I felt like I wanted to put my phone down, but I also was like, no. The fact this makes you feel uncomfortable is, for me, it's like, this is what people have to go through. So I felt like I had to keep reading. And even then, it was like, obviously I've asked all these people if I can share their stories, and I wouldn't share it without their permission. But, it's just one example of
course,
far too many similar ones. And I felt like it was kind of relevant there because it is something about it's this like power that I feel like certain men have, that they feel like they can just do that. They can just be like, can I have your number? And then, like, I'm going to check to make sure it's a real number. And it's like, you don't have any right to do that to someone. You really don't. Like, there are people I consider friends, and I don't have their mobile numbers. And I've never felt like going down the lines of, like, I can see, I know what you're thinking. No. But even then, right? So 10 years ago, when I say to you, oh, can I have your number? And you said, no, I'm really sorry. Whatever. I didn't then start continuing going, why can't I have your number? Why not? Like, you should just give me your number. We're friends. Give me your number. Like, I would never do that. I just stopped. Because that's what any decent human being should do.
Yeah.
If you ask
and
for someone's
to the point
number
that I didn't
and they
even
say
remember.
no,
Yeah.
get the fuck out.
I enjoyed you outing yourself there, Chris. That was good.
You know, obviously it's a different context because obviously there wasn't anything more there. But like,
no, yeah.
I knew that I knew the very simple concept that no means no.
You didn't even ask
no.
why. Yeah.
No, because I didn't need to. Because it's not relevant
No.
to it, you know? It's like, you said no, and I was like, why? Why do I need to keep going? Why would I then start going, why? You know, give me a number. Like, that would just be fucking weird. Like,
Yeah.
So I just was like, stop.
Fortunately, lots of people don't. I mean, I used to work, obviously you guys know I used to work as a fundraiser, sort of in Birmingham and surrounding cities last year. And so when you're sort of standing on the street and you have to approach people and you
so
have to be really
vulnerable.
friendly to sort of get to pitch them and get to talk to them. But half the time, sort of, it would just be like a younger sort of guy would come up to you and you know they're not really interested in what you're actually trying to say or like the work you're trying to do. And they just sort of, they hear you out and then they just ask for your number. And it's kind of like even, you know, the fact, even if I did like fancy you, I'm at work.
There's a time
For a
and a
start,
place.
like I'm at work, and also you say no, sorry, I'm at work, and they just keep asking, and it's like I had so many occasions where I had to give guys my number, and then like say sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not interested when they were texting, and they wouldn't get it, and I had to block them in the end because you couldn't give them a fake
Yeah.
number because they're gonna drop call your phone, and like it's
Yeah.
so upsetting that as a woman you feel like you can't stand up for yourself, and you can't sometimes forcefully say no because you don't know what's going to happen
Yeah.
to you. And there's been so many cases of women who turned down a guy and like actually stuck to their guns and said, no, I'm not giving you my number, turned them down. And then they've been attacked because of it. And obviously, like, I don't assume every guy who asks my number is going to attack me if I say no, but you can't take that risk. And then if they're going to drop call your phone, you can't even give them a fake number. So you just end up feeling really uncomfortable all the time and not knowing when you're going to get these weird messages and not knowing if they're going to contact you from a different phone.
You know, Kat, you were saying how you felt bad for blocking them.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I was like, why? Like, that's not on you. Nothing about that is on you. A person acted inappropriately and you were like, I don't want you in my life. And like, it's so because I know that for me, I wouldn't feel guilty about that. I'd be like, I'm just not fucking dealing with that shit today. And I was like,
yeah,
it's this extra level of something as a woman that you feel bad about it. And it's like, I hate that you feel bad about that because you should feel perfectly free. If a guy messages you out of the blue and says something like that, you'd be like, fuck off.
I don't feel bad about it. I block people like there's no tomorrow.
I mean,
well,
and
I
rightly
think
so.
my attitude was at the time, I thought, oh, well, he's bought me a drink, so that means, like, you know,
I owe him something.
I owe him, yeah. Like, yeah. So it's sort of, my attitude is different now because, you know, I'm older and I'm in a relationship, and I think Pierce has taught me a lot because...
Oh, for sure. But I wonder if maybe that mindset you had when you were younger is something that maybe lots of women younger also have, and women your age and women older than you also have. So I think it's useful that you were able to share that. And I personally, I would say I can't. No, I can't, because I wanted to say, hey, you know, don't feel like you have to give your number up. But obviously that's not the end. Because so in fact, you know what? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying to men, don't be fucking creeps and ask for women's numbers like that. You don't have any right to it. I don't care if you bought them a drink or 2 drinks or 10 drinks. If they don't want to give you their number, they don't want to. And if they say no in any situation, it fucking means no. Just understand and get into your head that there's there's not no means yes. They're not playing hard to get. Yeah. If they say no, they mean no. It's a very simple concept. And if you haven't got that into your head by the age of 7, like, go and do something about it because you're a fucking idiot.
I mean, there's still this concept as well of like kind of like Pride and Prejudice, Mr. Darcy era of women having to be coy and playing hard to get. So like, oh no, I said I couldn't give you my number, but that's not possibly because I don't want to, it's because I'm just being polite. And that's just it's so outdated, and it's not the case, and it means that it just makes me angry, honestly, when people don't take my word for it. Like, I'll say no to something and they take that as an
And they think
invitation
you're
to
being
challenge.
feisty.
It's like, you know,
Oh,
they don't
yeah.
respect your actual choice to say
The
no
thing
and
I
to mean
always
it.
say is, you flip it on its head. If someone asked me to do something and I said no, I would expect them as a fellow human being to understand that I'm saying no and stop, you know? So why should I not be able to do that in reverse? If I expect someone else to respect me saying no, how on earth can I ever go through a day and not respect someone else's right to say no? That's just, it's wrong, so wrong.
A really
Anyway.
a really fun one as well is this is obviously COVID times. I've really missed, you know, I'm a student, obviously I've missed clubbing, I've missed going out, but there's some parts of it I really haven't missed at all, and specifically
Oh,
it's
yeah.
the idea that if someone sort of approaches you when you're clubbing and is like wanting to get with you, if you say no, a lot of the time they'll only respect it if you have a boyfriend, which is weird. And it's not even if they're not there. It's like if you say no, it's like, oh come on, why not? And sort of trying to get with you. Whereas if you say no, I have a boyfriend, it's like, oh, because there's another man, I respect his decision, but I don't
Or
respect
they're
yours.
like, or they don't believe you if you say you've got a boyfriend. They're like, oh, well, where is he then?
Yeah.
Like, that's
And
another
actually,
thing
as
I've had.
a follow on to that, I've had someone share with me that so they're lesbian and they said, I have a girlfriend.
Oh, yeah,
And
I know where this is going.
that wasn't respected in the same way that we're saying that if, you know, there are pertains to where if you say to a man, I have a boyfriend, it's like, oh, okay, she's taken, she's out, you know, I've got to go chase someone else. But this person saying, I have a girlfriend was like, oh, well, let me show you what you're missing. It's like,
yeah.
Hang on, no, you can't.
Again, it's respecting
like,
a
I'll
man's
only
no,
respect
but
a
not respecting a
situation.
woman's no.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I'll only respect it if you like belong to another man. But if it's a woman, no, you're just, you know, you're lying to yourself. Like, let me show you that. It's like, fuck off. That doesn't.
There's also the idea that if a woman is kissing another woman, that they're doing it for a man's benefit instead of doing it because they want to do that. Yeah, that's so sick. I was gonna ask Katie, if you're not comfortable, we'll cut it. But I thought it might be interesting to discuss the group chat that was made about boys wanting to try and take our virginity.
Yeah.
Without us.
There's a lot I can say about school. I can also talk about the fact that, you know, certain few people from pretty much from year 8 until year 12 thought it was okay to grab my ass whenever they saw me. And I never really felt comfortable enough to stand up to it and would sort of pass it off as a joke. And it wasn't until these sort of things started happening in front of teachers, and one teacher in particular, who was very lovely, pulled me aside and said, are you okay? Do you want me to get involved? That I actually felt able to forcefully stand up to them and be like, you need to stop. Like, you're not my friend and this is not okay. But that went on for years. You know, at school, it was so common.
There were some boys in our school that, I mean, there is in every school, but that were just
twats.
Not even like sex obsessed, but just sort of they had the mission to get through as many of the women at school as possible. And because Katie and I were like virgins at the time, they saw it as it was until you started going out with Will, and then they kept like it going still, but like just about me at that point, because they respected you had a boyfriend by then, which was just ridiculous. But Katie and I, we had a group chat made about who could take our virginity first, and they had like rules that if they got a hug from us, they'd message in the group chat saying like they were like getting points to be one step closer, and they would do it in class.
How many men were in this group chat?
I think
4, wasn't it?
About four or five, yeah.
The worst thing was they were our friends.
Oh yeah, and we were like good friends with them, yeah.
Not with all of them, you know, acquaintances with some, but it was like the friendship group kind of, I guess, adjacent to ours. And they thought that was
and
okay.
Well, Chris didn't know, but the reason we found out about the group chat is because I started dating one of them. And he told me, and there was pictures they'd taken of us just walking around in this chat. Like, there was one of my shoulder, like, yeah, really odd. And he said, oh, because we're dating now, I feel like I've got to tell you, and showed me the chat. And I was like, well, that's nice. And then I was thinking in my head, yep, definitely not sleeping with you. Thank God I didn't, but...
So the only point where he felt it was wrong was when you were actually dating him. Not before, not the creepy taking pictures without your consent, not the point scoring for things as simple as having a hug.
Us being nice
just
to them.
Being
like
with
human
you
beings.
suddenly is like, oh, now I feel like I should... Did he apologise?
I don't think so. I don't remember. He might have, but I don't remember it. I think I didn't... I guess I regret not making a big deal about it. I think I just sort of accepted it, and that's the thing. Like, now looking back, that's a really fucked up thing to do, and I hope they've all learned to be more respectful of women, because, you know, it now just feels so uncomfortable. Yeah.
You say you feel bad, like, I don't know, like, it's so unfair that you're put in that position, and it's like, how could you have been expected to, like, who would know how to react to that? No one would. Like, imagine, from my side, I'm trying to imagine finding out that there's this group chat with people, like, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd be so fucking terrified.
And the other thing is, we know the school wouldn't have done much about it, because I think, one, because we're in sixth form, I feel like they wouldn't have cared as much. And the other thing was that when I remember when I joined the school, there was drama going on because the boys had been caught, and I think it was some of the same boys actually, were caught with a list of who's got the best bum. Do you remember that, Katie?
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I just joined the school at the time, and I remember all of this going on, and yeah, and I don't think there was really the right response from the school.
No.
I don't know. I think they sort of let it go.
What was the response? Do you remember?
I don't remember there being a response, to be honest.
Exactly. I feel like they were just caught out, and they were like, it was meant to be a bit embarrassing for them that they'd been caught with, because it was literally like the names of the girls and then ratings all the way down it. Yeah, and I think we would remember if there was a response. Nobody got like excluded or like in massive amounts of like detention or anything like that. So the response couldn't have been great. And I actually think that's worse than two boys having a fight, you know?
That's a million times worse.
Yeah.
That's so much. That's.
But it's always kind of treated as like a boys will be boys. No, they haven't actually injured anyone, so it's okay. But I mean, with the group chat thing, I obviously it was horrible, but I wasn't massively surprised, to be honest, because there was so much, there's so many instances I can remember from being that age, being in like secondary school and sixth form, of similar boys or different ones just being really inappropriate and making me really uncomfortable. And I don't like to think a lot about school, to be honest, because there's so many things I remember that I feel so embarrassed about to think of, because I remember people treating me in a certain way and me not responding to it, and me not standing up for myself and sort of trying to laugh along because I wanted to fit in and was worried people would call me too sensitive or something if I got upset over it. And it's funny that I had a really interesting conversation recently, after people talking about this sort of stuff at the minute, with a lot of my female friends here at uni, and turns out it's such a universal thing for all of us. So many girls don't like thinking back to their teen years because they remember sort of being treated badly by lots of men and not standing up for themselves, and you feel guilty for not saying something at the time, and you feel embarrassed for letting that happen. And that's such a universal thing for women, I think.
I think another thing is that, or personally for me, you see the boys being so immature at school, that all you want to do is date somebody older. This is like obviously, quite personal to me, but I feel like it is something a lot of teenage girls do, which is you think, oh, all the boys my age are just twats. I want to go out with someone who's older and is a bit more wise about the thing. But the truth is, actually, when the men are a few years older, they're not necessarily better behaved. They just are better at hiding their immaturities and, the way they look at women. They are a bit more sly about it. I'm not saying all men, for anyone comes
No,
for
but
me.
it's interesting. So me and my sister are fairly close, and we share a lot. And she came home a couple of days ago from school and told me about a situation where she'd been with a group of people and they've been making jokes like groups of friends do, and in this case it was quite a lot of boys, and one way or another it ended up being jokes about feminists, and it was like I don't even I don't remember what they are, but it was just really clear inappropriate things, and she told me that she felt really uncomfortable, and she was like she didn't know how to call that out. She didn't feel comfortable with her, so she was like she made a face and obviously was like, this is not okay, but she didn't know what to say, and apparently one of them afterwards then said to her, oh, I know it wasn't great that we were making those jokes. I'm not proud of it. And it's like, but you still did it.
Don't do it then.
You still did it. Like, don't just you.
And we're
you
not
can't
on about
just
kids.
say
They
it.
are
You can't just
17, 18
They're like
year olds
17.
as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. They're the same age as her. And I was just like, no, you don't understand. Okay, if you're gonna apologize, great. Apologize for being a dick and making me feel uncomfortable. Now go and follow that up with some actual concrete action to make sure you understand why that was inappropriate, why you shouldn't have made it, and that you're not going to make those jokes again. Because my heart broke when she was telling me this story, because I was like, that's not, I like to, wherever possible, I want to make sure that she feels empowered to do whatever the hell she wants to do in life, whatever that may be. And the fact that she was saying those things and saying that she was there not knowing how to respond, from my side, it's not the same context, but, in terms of jokes based around race and things, people have made jokes and I've frozen up. I've actually not known what to say. And I've done the same thing. I've like made a face and I've been like, I think I have to laugh because it will make this go away. And knowing that she's going for it from her perspective for a different reason, I was just like, it's just one of those moments and you're like, oh my God.
I think it might be a bit different now, but Katie, you were always very proud to call yourself a feminist. For me, I would always be like, I'm not a feminist, but I believe this.
You'd be like, I'm one of the boys.
Yeah, and I just had this like attitude that, like, it sounds really bad now, but this was an attitude I had in the past that women were being dramatic about things, and actually if you look at statistics of employment and all of that, it's hard to argue with. You do realise, and that's why I've tried to make an active effort now, because even me, someone who I consider myself to be reasonably intelligent, I'm not saying I'm the brightest person in the world, but was believed, I completely believed that men and women were pretty much, I recognised that there was some differences, but I thought we chose to be, I thought women sort of I don't know how to explain. Chris, do you kind of get what I mean?
I do, and actually,
Katie.
I'd love to share with you. So I asked her my story, and I tried to ask men what they felt. I asked a couple of questions, and one of them was, what do you think feminism is? Because for me, I've always described myself as a feminist. I'm proud to be a feminist. I think it's great to be a feminist, and I think anyone who's not is got to question who the hell they are and what they think is important. Because it's at the heart of it for me, it's it's about equality for all. It's a very simple
Yeah.
concept. It doesn't have to be more complex than that. It's very basic nature. Feminism is trying to make sure that in every single situation there are equal rights and equal opportunities, for men and women, for any people of any gender. That's just what it is. And so I got a variety of different responses, and I just kind of like to share them and hear what
Yeah,
you guys think.
go
And
for it. Okay.
you know, some of it is difficult, and I feel like I have to apologize for some of them because they're not.
That's right. We've probably heard
Yeah.
it all before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of them came in, equal rights, equal pay, or equal opportunity, and recognizing that men are privileged in everyday life. And I was like, okay, good. I like it. That feels sorry. It feels like you've understood it. The fight for full equalities between genders. Yes. Perfect. Great. Supporting equality for all genders. Fine. And then you get into some of the I'd say feminism is a fight for equality, unless you're a radical. And I was like, okay, here we go. And I know exactly what this person means. They're like, oh yeah, equality's good, but like, not those women who are burning their bras, not those ones.
Yeah.
Those guys, they're going too far.
They're crazy.
And one of the ones that really, okay, wow. So what do you think feminism is? A movement mostly dead in Western countries that is at times co-opted to put a veil on misandry, which, as I've learned, is the hatred towards men. So I was like, hang on,
Solid.
okay, let's stop a second. You think feminism is mostly dead and at times is just used so that people can express, and let's be honest, what you're saying is women can express how much they hate men. You are without that. What? Let's just stop here just for a second.
Trash behaviour.
What don't you understand? What don't you get about this? It's not about. Let's go back a second. The basic nature of feminism is about equality between the genders. It's not about placing women above men. It's not about taking, revenge against men for anything. It's about establishing equality in everything that happens in life. And I don't understand how someone can look at this and go, oh, well, actually, feminism doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Like, it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they did that. They got the vote. And they got equal pay. So that's done. That's dead. No one's a feminist anymore. And the only time it's mentioned is because people want to express some hatred towards men. And I was like, no, that's not it. That's not the case. The times where women are sharing stories and experiences like you two have done today and like I've had from my friends this week, where men have hurt them and made them feel unsafe and made them feel vulnerable, these are just their lived experiences. They're really horrible, horrible, horrible things. And they're just saying, this is what I've been through. And in this case, yes, it was at the hands of a man. That doesn't mean that you need to start thinking, oh, well, she just hates men. No, she's been hurt by a man. And the one reaction a man should have to hearing that is, this is horrific. And I need to fix my behaviors to make sure that I'm not replicating what that man did, because it might not be you. But that doesn't mean that you're innocent. It just means that you need to make sure that you never do that. It's so...
I do think...
I'm so angry about it. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I know Katie and I probably have said it a few times, but we'll joke saying, oh, men are trash. Like, and even though that is generalising, saying, oh, men are trash, it's because normally we're talking about an action a guy does that, in our experience, most men do. Like, instead of complimenting your personality or your intelligence, they'll say, oh, nice tits or nice bum, you know, like, and then it's, oh, men are trash. Like, and that's the thing, like, that doesn't mean we're men haters. It just means that our expectations of men have been gradually over the years lowered.
There was a friend shared to me, like, maybe, I don't know what you would think of this, but she said, she said, it's not just men. We as women can be just as bad. And I was like, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And then she said, saying things like, men are trash, why do men? It was for her a defense mechanism. It was just a way of trying to, like, get past it because at its very heart, it's a horrible thing. It's her being hurt, and it's like a defense thing, just be like, oh, men are trash, and like try and get past it. And I was like, yeah, I understand that absolutely, and I wanted to make sure that from my side, I explained that I knew that, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, but the defense mechanism is there because there's an issue. Because if there wasn't an issue, an ongoing issue, you wouldn't develop a defense mechanism. The very fact that you've developed it and are calling it a defense mechanism is a sign that it's happened far too many times to you and you've heard it too many times from other women. So it's not all men, but it's enough men that women are constantly feeling unsafe and vulnerable.
Yeah, and
that's
also
the real issue here. You know?
Gotta say, for me,
Should
the
I
whole
go through some of this?
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say for
you
me,
go,
like the
Katie.
whole sort of men are trash statement is an interesting one because I know I say it myself, to be honest. And obviously, with a sweeping generalization like that, it's not true. Of course, all men aren't trash. I can understand, to be honest, why some men would hear that and think, I haven't done anything wrong. This person's being unreasonable. I feel hurt by this. But I think the main thing to sort of notice as a man would be that the reason people are saying these just statements like almost for comedic effect, like, oh, men are trash. It's as a response to just being so exhausted by having to explain themselves all the time. You know, sometimes you don't want to say, oh yeah, this particular guy did this and this and this and this. Sometimes you just want to say, screw it, they're all trash, don't even think about it anymore. And it is just a response to being exhausted through having to constantly educate people and explain yourself all the time. And I think
the way I think about it is like from a racism side of things. Oh God, it's a horrible bad. Yeah, racist side of things. It's one of those things that you're like, you kind of like put your shields up so you can protect yourself and try and hide the facts that I don't think you could operate as a human being otherwise. I don't think I could operate as a human being if I actually, if I thought about every experience that I've had in terms of a racism perspective, it makes me want to not ever leave the house or talk to anyone ever again, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And, I can't ever fully put myself in the shoes of a woman, and I don't pretend to. But from what I can understand, I feel like it's a similar kind of situation that if there wasn't a defense mechanism there, how could a woman feel safe to ever do anything? So I don't know. I think it's lazy for men to just like, oh well, I wouldn't do it. It's like no. It's really I can't. I'm so angry about it. I'm gonna stop.
It's like when men sort of in order to sort of tear down the idea and explain why they don't like feminism or why they don't agree with what you're saying, they put all their energy into picking apart one point and saying, this is a sweeping statement, you shouldn't say that because it doesn't apply to me. And it's like, yes, I understand that these conversations can make you feel picked on, but if you really think that the most important thing there is your feelings, then it just shows a level of real lack of understanding, I think, to try and change the conversation into about you're making me feel bad rather than 97% of women have experienced harassment in their life. Yeah.
It's incredibly selfish in my mind, for people to listen to that and then to be like, well, not me. It's like, I would actually think in that situation, first of all, congrats for doing the bare minimum and not being a bad person. Really thumbs up to you, that's great. Now work out how we can keep that going and ideally go beyond that to try and change things and do better and make sure that you understand this was wrong, this made a woman feel unsafe. I'll make sure that I definitely don't do this, and if there's even like in my mind something that could lead to that, let's cut it off early. Like, use it as an opportunity to constantly check yourself and make sure that you're being the best person you can be. Don't use it as an opportunity to grandstand about how you're like, oh, I'm actually fine and I'm not a sexist. Like, grow up. It's not about you. It's never about you. It's about the real issue going on. Fuck's sake, I'm sorry.
Should we go through some of the statistics and bits that I got on Instagram?
I'd love to hear.
So I thought we would lead with, do you think we are close to gender equality? I don't know, you guys have probably seen, but without looking, can you guess what sort of like percentage of people said yes and percentage of people said no?
I'd say a lot of people probably said yes, unfortunately. Although I think like from
I guess my opinion on it is that from a legal point of view, from a point of view of laws and stuff like that, you can see why you'd think so, but there's so many underlying problems with society and its view of women, and the fact that we're expected to regulate our behaviour in order to be safe, rather than men regulating theirs to not perpetrate crimes. I'd say that's kind of it's going to be a long way before that's fixed.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's amazing how things being the case in law lead people to think that it's over. Like, murder is illegal. Murders still happen. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many things in life that are illegal but still happen. Discrimination
Yeah.
is illegal, but I guarantee you it still exists.
Yeah. So the results were 39 people said no, that we're not close to gender equality, and 6 people said yes, which
nice.
So 13% of people said that they think we are close to gender equality. All of them were men. Surprise, surprise. But
Shock.
Still, that is like that. 13% of people think that we're living in equality right now, like gender equality, which
something for me that shows that we're not is the
how?
fact that say Katie is, as we said at the beginning, she's a woman in STEM. My sister wants to become a woman in STEM. The fact that I have to specify a woman in STEM, do you not like? If there was true equality there, I wouldn't have to say that. There wouldn't have to be programs and schemes in place to enable us to have that. So
Yeah.
we're clearly not there.
Yeah, if you're still having to fill a quota, then you still haven't fixed the problem.
Exactly.
So.
She's a female footballer. Like, there is loads of examples you can
women's
think. Like
football,
it's
the women's World Cup, like things like that. And it's
yeah.
Not to mention the pay gap between women in the arts, because obviously it's not as regulated as, say, being a CEO of a company or working in a big business. Like, female actresses being paid so many more than the male leads, female leads. It's still a problem.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's 12% of record labels are owned by women. Okay, I'll go with another one. Women, would/do you talk to your male friends about discrimination you have faced? I was surprised because 72% of people said that they would talk to their male friends about discrimination, and to be honest, I was expecting less.
Yeah,
because
me too.
in my brain, I think if these many women are talking to their friends about like discrimination they face, you'd think there would be less discrimination because most people have got are friends with a male. I don't know.
It's interesting. So I asked, like I said, I asked women this week basically the question, where is it? Yeah. Is there anything I've ever said or done as a man that makes you feel unsafe or scared? Because if there is, I want to learn what I did and change my behaviors. And then I made clear that it's not a self-validation thing. I'm not looking so I can be like, yes, I am not part of the problem. That's not what I care about at all.
Although it is a hard question to ask.
It was. And I made clear as well that I was like, look, you don't have to answer it. If you feel like it's a lot, please don't worry. And tell me whatever you feel comfortable with and I will fully understand, and that's fine. And actually I was really lucky and really fortunate that actually everyone was able to respond to that, and that was really good. And I then said, if I ever made you feel that way in the future, would you feel like you were able to call me out and tell me about it? And if not, is there anything I could do to change that? And I think one of the first responses I got was, I probably wouldn't, no. But also, I don't think you could change anything about it. I think it's just horribly uncomfortable when someone makes you feel weird, and it feels worse if you tell them. But then she thought and said that's, in her eyes, she said, it's mostly on me because I'm not confident enough to say it. I would worry more about hurting their feelings rather than myself. So that's on me, and I have some issues there as well. And it was like, I felt really horrible because it was like, I could entirely understand why someone wouldn't feel comfortable calling me out in that kind of situation. And I hate that that's what it is, because I would hope that if I ever said anything, I'd hope if there's anything I'd said here today that you two wouldn't feel like you had to hold back from telling me that it was wrong. And I would want to hear that because I would want to fix it. And I would hope that if any of my friends, if I said anything to them and they felt it wasn't quite right, that they would just say to me, hey, look, this is wrong. I wouldn't say this. Go and read this. This is what I would say. Go and watch this. Here's an opportunity to learn. I would so much prefer that. But I realized, I can't force people to do that. And
and some people aren't, like Katie and I are quite confident in terms of like calling out people, and and I there are a lot.
Well,
of
now
women
we
who
are.
aren't, which is
I certainly didn't used to be.
I was thinking, well, you went to the Cat Academy of being a I was going to say bad words then. I'm trying to think of I don't know, a badass. Let's go with badass. I was thinking all the words that that sounds like I've like
being a strong, empowered woman.
No, you definitely helped, Kat. Honestly, after I became, for those of you who don't know,
I was just very aggressive. Which
me and Kat became friends when we were 14, and I think it's interesting. I was looking through old photos on Facebook the other day, and I messaged Kat about this and noticed, like, I kind of hate looking through photos of myself when I was younger because I wasn't very confident and I didn't stand up for myself. And there's like a line in the photos where you can see on one side is me looking really awkward in photos, looking like I don't want to be there, and on the other side is me looking confident. And that was when I met Kat, because she is so incredibly loud and unapologetic that you really kind of pushed me to stand up for myself and to just sort of say what I think a bit more. So thank you, and I definitely never shut up now. So
you've helped influence me to be. I don't, one thing, we wouldn't be doing this podcast if you hadn't encouraged me to do it. But also, I felt like having you in my life as someone who's influenced me has really driven me on this week. You're part of a group of people who've really driven me on to make sure that I can do what I can to change things. It's like when I heard about Meghan Markle and Sarah Everard and everything that was going on, I was like, I want to do something about this, and I don't know what I can do. And then I was like, we could do a podcast episode about it. We could talk about it. We could get it out there. And it was like, and it's probably going to make me feel horribly uncomfortable. And things I'm going to hear are going to make me feel really uncomfortable. But I don't really care about that right now, because I think this is a great opportunity to make a stand about this and make some kind of difference, even if it only makes a difference for like one person. That's a difference that I'll be happy to have had an influence in. But that, same as Katie, for me, a lot of that comes from your influence. So
thank you.
You did good.
You're a good egg.
I was going to say, like, in terms of to throw it back to you guys, obviously Katie, I mentioned earlier, you've always been a very proud feminist and feminist and Satan stopping me say feminist, Christ. No, and like you sort of taught me that it was okay to be that way, like to be like, I'm a feminist, I don't care if you call me a feminazi, like that's what as I should be,
Hell yeah.
And with Chris, obviously, we probably didn't talk about stuff enough, like in terms of discrimination, like
no, and I'm sorry for that. I am genuinely sorry for that.
But with me, with the race side of things, I just sort of had the attitude of like, you would talk, it's not your responsibility, but if I ever slipped up, I thought, oh well, Chris will pull me up, like I just sort of took that for granted. And so I feel like that has helped. And obviously I was debating on not obviously mentioning it in the podcast, but I'll keep it very anonymous. I had an incident a few years back where a friend took advantage, is probably like the best way to say it, and Chris found out. Well, I told him, but then he found out because the person recently contacted asking if it was okay to apologise to me, but wanted to make sure that I'd be comfortable before he reached out to me in case it was triggering, etc., etc. And obviously that's a whole uncomfortable situation for me, Chris, and I guess the guy as well. But the thing I did admire is not the right word, but respect, I guess, is him admitting to himself that he was wrong and being able to come forward, which I think was a big step. And it means that hopefully, it's a shame because in one way, because if he was open about it being him, it might encourage other men to take responsibility for what they've done. I don't know, but
I think I also respected that he wasn't seeking forgiveness from you, as I understand it. He wanted to apologize, but he was fully aware that you might not be wanting to accept that or ready to accept that, or ever when he said that, and that was fine. He just wanted to make sure that you knew that he knew, maybe slightly too late, that it was wrong.
Much too
And
late.
I respect that. I respect that you've come to that point in your life. It's sad and wrong that it didn't happen sooner, but you got there in the end, I guess.
But I think I want to make the point of that I don't hate him. I hate what he did, but I don't hate him, and I think that's the thing that I don't think I said to him I've forgiven you or what have you, but I said that I've moved on, and it means that if you have slipped up, to any men who are listening, if you have said something inappropriate to a woman or you have done something inappropriate, obviously it depends what it is, because some things you can't move past, but it's not too late to say sorry and not too late to learn where you went wrong. And that person proved that to me, that that even if you did a bad thing doesn't mean you're not going to learn, because I just assumed after that point that they'd never think about it again and they might do the same thing again in the future. And thankfully them saying that to me has reassured me that they're not going to do it again.
I think they obviously did the right thing there, but also let's not get into patting them on the back too much, because I think in my opinion it's good that they apologise, and especially they did it in the right way by saying, I understand that you might not want to hear this, but I would like to admit where I went wrong. But that is kind of, to be honest, that's kind of the bare minimum. If you really hurt someone,
that's like the last resort.
If you have already really hurt someone, obviously the best thing is don't do that in the first place, but that is the bare minimum, to apologise and to admit that you went wrong. And the fact that that is so unusual, that it's like, wow, this person actually admitted something, that's all men should be like that, I think that should just be the norm. And the fact that that's like, oh, what a big step, is, to be honest, a bit depressing, really.
I think I can respect from my side, and I don't want to talk for you at all, I respect that they admitted to you without needing provocation. They themselves have understood that it's wrong and also changed their behaviors. And I, like you said, Katie, I think it is, I really feel like that's the minimum that we should do. I think something that even depresses me even more is that so many people are unable to meet the bare minimum.
Or the bare minimum of not doing it in the first place, isn't
it?
Exactly.
Let alone, revolutionary, actually calling out misogynistic behaviour and sort of rape culture in your male friends when you see it. There's definitely levels to it. But just going back to the statistic you had in that poll, Kat, about the amount of people who are talking to their male friends about this sort of thing, I wonder how much of that is from the last couple of weeks. Because I know personally with the Sarah Everard case,
that is true,
everything going on in the media, I had not really opened up to a lot of my male friends before now. I'm on a STEM degree. A lot of my friends are guys. And over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of really in-depth, quite difficult conversations been going on, and it's been really useful. But also I've kind of seen it's been very new to a lot of them too, and I think for a lot of them, I've started to, from my point of view, I always thought anyone who's against feminism, you're worse, I'm never talking to you, and I've kind of learned from talking to my male friends about it, just how little some of them were aware of what goes on in the day-to-day life of being a woman, and just how little, I kind of got to understand why so many guys think that we've reached gender equality and that feminism isn't a problem and that women are being dramatic, because nobody's told them these things before. And I think it's so important that's why it's so important to talk to your male friends about these things.
I think one of the statistics that's sort of relevant here is that about men believing that women will exaggerate and lie about experiences they've had regarding discrimination. I don't know if you agree, Katie, but I do think that sometimes men feel like women are waiting for them to slip up so they can call them out or exaggerate so that women benefit from it. And actually 28% of the people on the poll, which is a lot, said that they think women would lie and exaggerate about experiences they've had regarding discrimination, which that scares me really, because women, I really don't think
we underplay it,
you know,
if anything.
Yeah,
especially when you're talking to your male
that's
friends.
right.
A lot of like my, obviously wouldn't name anyone again, but a lot of the women I know at uni have had quite scary things happen to them while they've been at university, and they've told me and told a couple of their female friends, but no one outside of that. And if it's ever alluded to, this thing happened to me, it's incredibly underplayed. And so, yeah, that's kind of worrying.
Yeah. I do think you're right with saying like it underplayed, because, I mean, the fact that you didn't even know, I don't think I'd shared with you about the experience Chris and I just talked about that I had.
Yeah, you've mentioned it sort of briefly, but not gone into detail.
Yeah, and I feel like, there's been a few other things over the years that have happened that I've just brushed under the carpet.
Even when you did say that to me, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
you underplayed it then. I remember you being reluctant to tell me, and I forget the exact words, but there was an element there of you trying to play it down, and it was
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's really sad that women this podcast isn't meant to be depressing. It is meant to be empowering. It's like, well, I'm not saying just because I'm on a podcast speaking about my experience you have to go and do the same thing. I'm just saying that if this gives you the encouragement you need to go and talk to a friend, it doesn't have to be a male friend, but talk to a friend about discrimination or anything, just open the conversation up, because that's the only way things are going to change.
I don't think it's depressing. I think it's real. I think people find it depressing because we know that it's wrong, and it hurts us to hear it from a side of, we're creatures that can feel empathy for other human beings, and we hear it and we go, that is such a horrible thing to go through. So it's not depressing in of itself. It's a real issue.
Yeah.
It's real and it's wrong and it's depressing because it still happens. And if, like me, you hear these stories and it makes you feel depressed, please try and do what I'm trying to do. Use that energy, that sense that you have inside you that this is wrong, and do something with it. Try and make a difference.
Yeah. And we're not saying you have to go to protests or anything like that. It can, even if you don't want to talk to people, pick up a book. It's like, this is the most important audience here, in a funny way, is men, because, that's the people women are aware of the issue, and sometimes, like me, you go from being, I wasn't anti-feminist, I just didn't associate that I was actually a feminist.
Slightly confused.
I was in denial. Yeah, but with men, there is also the peer pressure of, oh, it's not cool to be a feminist, so I'm, fuck it.
It's the love culture side of things. It's like, oh, we don't do that. We're men. We don't do that.
But if you're embarrassed about doing stuff in public, pick up a book. There's so many, or read an article if you can't be bothered to. Just start somewhere.
Even just sharing something on, with everything going on in the last few weeks, I've noticed a lot of my male friends just sharing things about the Sarah Everard case on their Instagram story. And obviously it's not much, but just a little thing like that, it shows the women around you, they see that and they think, oh, there's a man who is doing something to educate himself on this, and and that makes you think there's someone I could potentially talk to about something like this if I had to, and it's comforting. And I think, obviously, as you were saying, Chris, it can be depressing and real for guys to hear about this, but they are probably the most important audience, I'd say, for women the last couple of weeks, although everyone's been kind of coming forward in one go and sharing their stories recently, and it's incredibly important, but it's also pretty exhausting as a woman who's already aware that stuff goes on, to hear it all the time. But I'm hoping sort of it'll be worth the exhaustion and the sort of how uncomfortable it makes you feel as a woman hearing these stories that are very similar to your own and making you think about stuff, because hopefully in the end all this sharing and difficult conversations will lead to people understanding each other a bit more, and men understanding how their actions impact people, and also women understanding that just because you haven't been raped or physically assaulted doesn't mean you haven't experienced these problems, and means you can still feel valid in being upset about these things.
Yeah.
And I think I would add a challenge to men listening to this, in that if you see anything about women and it makes you think not all men, and it makes you feel like you want to say not all men, don't comment it, prove it. Do something to prove that it's not all men, because that feeling exists, that perception that it exists, it does exist, and it exists because too many men have done this. So you know what, use that energy, use that not all men, to prove that not all men do it. Prove that that you can be better than that. Prove that you as a person can be better than that. Prove that you can call out your friends on that and that you can do better. Prove that you can raise awareness of this, and keep doing that. And don't ever just sit there and think that you writing not all men underneath a woman's story or in response to a woman is enough, because it's not even that it's not enough, it's completely fucking useless and unhelpful. So if you see that, if you think it, stop, challenge yourself, prove that it's not all men. Use it as an opportunity to better yourself, not to try and oppress women or talk down to them, because that's completely unhelpful. And to be honest, I fucking despise you if that's what you're still doing right now. Just stop and be different.
I had a few short, not stories, comments that people said that they were happy for me to share on the podcast, and I thought that might be a good idea, because it shows that these are real women. They're not statistics. They're people that we know. Obviously I'm not going to name them, but the first person put, "When I say no to a date but they keep pushing and say why can't we be friends, dude, no means no." These are all things that men have done to make women feel uncomfortable, by the way. Sorry, I should have said that. The second person put, "90% of the time at work I'm by myself, and a few occasions men have been very intimidating to me because of that." Another woman put, "I was followed by a guy in broad daylight at Cornmarket Street in Oxford, terrifying." And lastly for this section was, "My boyfriend at the time, I was 16, saying if I didn't have sex with him, he would break up with me."
That's so horrible. I mean, obviously they're all bad, but that is, I think that's the worst one. Being 16 as well, like, everyone matures different ways, but when I was 16, I was a child. You know, I wasn't ready to deal with other people's expectations of me in that sense, and like, wasn't ready for that sort of manipulation.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. Like, you know, she would probably, like, I'm not saying she did, but if she slept with that guy, that's not because she wants to at that point. That's because she's been manipulated or feel like she has to. And you might say, you know, oh well, it's only words, she didn't have to, but at the same time, when you're that age, even now, if you like love someone or think you're in love with someone, and you feel like that's what you have to do for them to not leave you, you know, it does feel like there's not an option there.
I wanted to add what you were saying, because I think a lot of men will go, oh well, I don't do any of the, you know, I'm not a rapist, I haven't sexually assaulted when I haven't followed a woman. Okay, good, fantastic. But it doesn't stop there. There's the things on the, well, I guess almost a microaggressions level. So someone who replied to our story explained how when they were younger, they always loved kind of organizing games and group projects and kind of being in charge, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
how there were
I saw
boys
that.
who would do that, and they'd be celebrated as being leaders, as being confident, as being all this. But when she did it, she was bossy and loud, and going too far. And it was like, it's the double standards in there. It's that double standards of a woman speaking out is not being bossy or outspoken or anything. A woman who's speaking out is being brave and courageous and doing in the same way that if a man was to do that, it would be exactly the same.
It
It's
only
all
gets
like, oh, you
worse as
just
you get
tell you.
older. I mean, I've always been
ridiculous.
bossy, and now I'm, as you know, women in STEM doing my final year of a physics degree, and I'm now working in group projects and stuff where they're predominantly my course is men, and all it takes in a group project when you're in a leadership role is one or two boys who have a problem with being some ingrained problem in being told what to do by a woman and in respecting a woman's voice, and it derails the project, and it's a massive pain in the ass. And I'm currently 2 weeks away from handing in my final research project for my degree, and I unfortunately have been working with one particular guy in my group who in every single meeting, and we are on about 16 hours of Zoom over the week in these meetings, it's a lot of my time, and in every single meeting, every time a woman raises a point, which is a lot because our sub-team leader is a woman, our project leader is a woman, and me, being a woman, is the head editor. Every time a woman raises a point, he's just waiting to correct them, he's shaking his head, he's talking over them, and he's refusing to accept direction until a man repeats the same thing. And it's just exhausting. It's so irritating.
Yeah. And when I just before I left uni, I helped set up a food bank in my area, and without women we would have failed. Without women we would have fallen apart. We needed
Was that the Sally Oak
the
Food Bank?
people that we had there. It is, yeah.
My friend Elise was one of the people running that.
Yeah.
You probably worked with her. Yeah.
Exactly, and she was amazing. I genuinely believe that we would not have lasted 10 seconds without it.
She put
It was
a lot of work in, bless her.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And it was so many women were involved in starting it, in keeping it going, we would have been nothing had we ignored what women said or tried to challenge them. We respected that everyone involved knew something that was useful, and it didn't matter if they were a man or a woman, it didn't matter what the colour of their skin was. It mattered that they had an idea that allowed it to be successful, and it was. So, if there are men out there who think that they know better or that they have an issue hearing a woman's opinion, I honestly believe that anything that's happening is better when we have more than just the white man's view in the room, Everything in life is better when we bring in that diversity of opinion, and that means listening to women, accepting that they have a valid point to make, and not challenging on the basis of their gender. It reminded me of something else that someone shared to me. They were talking about, so they, earlier in the week they got drunk, and they called up their ex while they were drunk because it had ended badly, and they wanted to talk it through because they felt like they'd left it in a bad place, and they wanted to fix that. And they had a chat, and then it turns out that he'd gone to speak to friends and spent the whole week slagging her off and calling her horrible things, and they were mutual friends, so it ended up coming back to her, and she heard about it. And it really made her feel bad, and she said, what was it she said? I said, I'm really sorry that you didn't deserve that, that's really horrible. And she said, oh yeah, some of us bring it on ourselves. And I was like, no, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. What you did in this is you called someone whilst drunk and and tried to fix something because that was what you felt was the right thing to do. That right there, that's what you did. Okay, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that because she wanted to do some good.
She wasn't hoping to hurt anyone by it or upset anyone.
And exactly, this is what I was like. Is like everything, the reaction that he had, the fact that he went and started slagging people off, the fact that he did all these things, and what's worse, doing all of that, knowing full well that it could easily filter back to her.
Yeah.
All of that is on him and his mistakes and his actions and his
that's devastating for her
lack
as well.
of empathy, of emotion, of caring. He knew that it could happen and didn't care. So it was nothing to do with her, and she was taking the responsibility onto herself. And I was like, you know that's not it, right? You know that this is on him and his decision to do everything that followed that, and he didn't have to do any of that, and nothing you did. You're not responsible for his actions. Yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting thing.
I mean, a story like that, like, it may not at first seem particularly relevant to a women's rights specifically thing, but it is, for me, it's kind of like women are brought up to apologize for everything they do, and you're kind of taught as a girl that it's your responsibility to make sure that you are respected. Like, it's your responsibility alone to make sure that you don't dress in a certain way that could allow people to say anything about you, to make sure that you don't say certain things that could allow someone to say something about you. It's always the woman's job to ensure that they explain themselves fully to everyone else, rather than just assuming that you can be respected, if that makes sense.
And if you don't, you're a psycho.
Yeah.
Psycho bitch.
Yeah.
Completely.
Whereas men could very easily learn that if you see a woman dressed in a certain way, you don't have to say anything or do anything.
Oh.
You can just let that happen because if you choose to say something or do something, or that right then is nothing to do with her. That's on you.
There's a very simple solution, which is you can think she's got a nice ass, you can think that she's got great tits, but just don't say it. Think it and don't say it.
Don't say it and don't act on it. Don't do anything with that.
It's like if you're a kid in a shop and your mum says, don't touch anything, don't breathe on anything, don't just have those rules, okay?
It's amazing to me how, like I don't say this to make you feel uncomfortable because I know that it's something that you would say, but
yeah,
you have quite big boobs. I feel like I can say that to you.
Yeah. We're at that point.
That's your body. It's very hard. That's your body, and I'm not saying it to be a creep or anything like that.
Yeah,
that is it, and it's the fact that someone looks at it and goes, "Oh, well, she's got big boobs," and it's like,
therefore I can comment on it. She obviously chose to make them that size. Just for me.
It's ridiculous. And it's like, it's the thing. It's like you have that one, and then you have the opposite level where it's like, oh, she's flat chested, and it's like,
yeah. Well,
what don't you understand here?
Me and
a woman
Kat
doesn't look down at her chest and go, right, okay, I've decided that I would like massive boobs and like think them into existence. That's not how fucking human biology works. In the same way that you don't look at your tiny dick and think, oh, I'd love it to be bigger, and it magically grows. It doesn't. You still got a tiny fucking dick at the end of it. Like,
Kat, I remember me and you in school. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I remember we had very similar dress sense, specifically in sixth form. We weren't very good at adhering to the dress code. We wore a lot of baggy trousers and crop tops and docks, because they were comfy, and we were both like, ooh, it's alternative and like indie music, and the difference in the comments we'd get was kind of staggering. We'd be wearing often literally the same outfits because we were twins. You'd be wearing a top, which was a perfectly appropriate top, but just because you had large boobs, they were more visible because of the size of them. Nothing to do with the top you'd chosen to wear. I'd be wearing the same thing, and I wouldn't get comments, but you would be sexualized by all the boys in your year making comments, even teachers, telling you.
Oh my god! And female teachers were like
and
the
other
worst.
girls in the year, like making comments as in, being judgy, like, oh, she's dressed like that, purely because of the actual shape of your body. And meanwhile, I'd get boys coming up to me and being like, oh, you're flat chested. It's like, in what world does it matter? Like, we're literally, us two would be wearing like matching tops. I'd be getting shit for one reason, you'd be getting shit for the exact opposite reason. It's just like, give us a fucking break. Just let me do my work.
It's ridiculous.
You two
That's
are
the thing,
team
there's no-
booty all the way.
Huh?
There's no reason to like just make it like why it doesn't help anything. It doesn't help anything for me to be like, oh, you know, cat's got like it's not helping anything. It's not if it's saying it and you know it's going to make them feel uncomfortable, you're actively hurting that person. Stop.
I know you made a TikTok the other day, which was hilarious. Which
Yeah.
was like you like stupid like
Oh,
things
yeah.
boys have said to you about your boobs, like gross comments. And the whole point of the TikTok
Yeah.
was you being like, why would you say that? Yet the comments
And
on
it
the
was
TikTok
hilarious.
was every single one of them was men like, oh, so you wouldn't let me motorboat you? And like, oh, they look great. It's like, read the room. Even when it's being made so obvious that your behaviour is not okay and you're still doing it.
Someone put, and that was the one that annoyed me the most, was, yeah, bet you liked it though.
Ugh.
I was like, yeah, I really liked people who I didn't really know coming up to me and talking about my breasts, yes, because, you know, it's just so,
It's amazing the like cognitive like dissonance, the inability to understand. Like, you know, you put a TikTok up where you said stupid things boys have said about stupid things. I don't think you need to be a fucking genius to understand if someone says stupid things, they don't like it. They're not happy about it. It's a very simple thing.
You know, the whole video was you like fake gagging at the
It's
idea
so
of boys saying
fucking
these
obvious.
things to you, and yet
I
they're
was
commenting
watching
the
it.
exact same thing down below. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I was like, I watched it and I was like, oh, you know, I felt you dealt with it in a way that weirdly it felt again like you were trying to make something funny out of it, because otherwise it is a really horrible dark thing that people have said this to you. I was like, how fucking stupid are some people that you can watch that and think, yes, what she's saying is she wants more of these comments. I'm like, yes,
The way
you
you
are.
explain it.
Congratulations, you've revealed to us that you have no fucking brain cells whatsoever.
They've got two
think
brain
the
cells
thing
and they're
that-
just both going boobs, 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 boobs to each other.
Yeah. And I can sort of like, I'm sort of, you know, somewhat like immune to those comments, just because you get used to it after a certain point. You sort of roll your eyes and you accept it. I'm not saying that is the right way, but that's sort of how I've learnt to be. But I remember when I was 15, I sort of got boobs when I was like 14, 15. It's sort of like an overnight process. I think I like moved school, left Chris, gained boobs, and then it was like, oh shit. But my point was that I remember my aunt actually having a conversation with me. She was like, she didn't say now because you've got boobs. She said, you know, you've got a woman's body now, and so you've got to understand that men are going to treat you as a woman. And she was saying this because of the way I'd play fight with my uncle and some of his friends, which that was just, you know, like
as a kid,
what we did, and it was like family, and I didn't see it as being wrong. And then one of the family friends had made some inappropriate comments, not to me, but they got back round sort of thing, and then that was like, well, you know, she does have her boobs out or whatever, and it's like, well, you know, as 15, it's not 15, 16, 17, still a child. Even when you're 18, that doesn't mean your family friends who are, you know, old enough to be your parents should comment. It's just like, and it's the whole, if you were a few years older, you know, I'd have a bit of you, and it's
trash behaviour.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. And I do wonder how many girls have had that conversation with their family. You've got a woman's body now, so you've got to understand that men are going to look at you.
Same with me. I think a lot of girls through it. I remember like my mum was quite like strict, bit of a strict mum growing up. Which at the time I was like, why would you let me do this and that? And then as soon as I got older, I was like, thank you. You're wonderful.
Yes.
And just things like
Yeah.
going to a house party, say when I was 15, I'd want to be wearing a short skirt. And my dad would be like, oh yeah, you look fine, go ahead, not thinking about it. And my mum would be really concerned. And I'd always sort of think, why do I have to,
Yeah, actually.
what do you mean? I mean, because she'd say people will get the wrong idea and boys will get the wrong idea and they'll act on that. And I always kind of thought, I didn't really get it because I always thought, well, I don't have the wrong idea though. I know I don't want any of that. So why is it a
Exactly.
problem? And it wasn't until I think I was older and had sort of experienced more that there are, unfortunately, some men in the world who it won't actually matter to them if you don't want that and if you don't have that same idea. They will do it anyway. And it wasn't until I kind of realised that I started to understand, I think, why she always made it my responsibility to look a certain way and to be safe.
It's difficult as well because I know if I had kids, and I had daughters or a daughter, then if they're definitely going to get the big boob gene, and I mean, yeah, Pierce's mum and me combined, those genes,
got no
that
chance.
kid's going to be doomed. No chance. But my point is just sort of like, for me, I have the attitude, I'll wear what I want, and men, women can tell me that I'm being silly, men can look at me and I can say I don't care, but at the end of the day I do wonder when I am a mother if I'll be having the same conversation with my daughter saying, hang on a minute, button up, don't go out like that because something might happen to you. Because that's the thing, you can say, if something happens to me, so what? That I don't care. I want to live my life and I want to dress how I want to dress. But as a mother, your attitude's going to change.
Kind of gotta. I mean, an interesting.
I think the way that we can make sure that doesn't, or try and help that be less of an issue, is by men not guessing the wrong idea.
Oh, yeah.
Not to go into that. They need to, it's on men then to stop that being an issue, because that's what the issue is here, right? It's not you dressing a certain way, it's the reaction to that from men. And like I said, the responsibility isn't then on you, the responsibility is on the men who are getting the wrong idea. And getting the wrong idea is a ridiculous way of masking being an inappropriate person.
I mean, obviously
it's not
that
getting
is
the wrong
the
idea.
solution.
You're just wrong.
Obviously the solution is not censor your daughters, it's educate your sons, but obviously that sort of thing, it does as much as that's what needs to happen. That's not going to happen overnight, and I think by the time I have a daughter, if I have a daughter ever, it will probably still wouldn't have been fixed and will still be an issue. So it means while this is still ongoing, we as women have still got that sort of difficult decision to make of what you value. Do you value your freedom or your safety? And I think another factor that comes into that is your build and what size you are. So I know, Kat, I always noticed us growing up, we had a difference in how we approach things because you have always been quite strong. Like, this girl, we used to go to festivals a lot together. I'd always be on her shoulders. Like, you can look after yourself and you can handle yourself in a fight if it comes to it. I'm 5'2".
She's fucking stronger than me. I'm happy to admit that.
Yeah,
I'm a fucking weakling in comparison. Jesus.
I'm 5'2" and have absolutely no upper body strength. So there's a certain factor for it for me as well, in that I want to sort of say, I'm just going to dress however I want, and I'm going to act however I want. And if a man is inappropriate to me, I am going to tell him to stop it, and I am going to tell him to fuck off, and damn the consequences. But then for me, there's also the element of, I know that I couldn't defend myself if I came down to it. So as frustrating as it is, I do have to change the way I live my life and manage my own behaviour for my own safety. And in terms of what you were saying earlier as well about being made to feel uncomfortable by gay guys, and just because on the odd occasion, if somebody was to be sort of way more in your personal space than you're comfortable with, I think a lot of men may not realise that it's not always just sexual in what can make a woman feel afraid. Let's say if a guy comes up to me and he's just, a bit too close to me than I'm comfortable with, or he's sort of standing right over me or being a bit aggressive. If I say to back up and he says, obviously it's totally uncommon, but he says, oh, but I'm gay, it doesn't matter. It's like, I'm not scared of you because I think you fancy me. I'm scared of you because you're 3 times my size. You're 3 times my strength. And I know that if you did want to hurt me, you could, and there's nothing I can do about it. And that's kind of, there's that sort of added element. It's not just a case of men going out of their way to do these things to women and to sexually assault women, there's also the element of that when there's such a huge size difference going on between a man and a woman, even if they mean you no harm, there is automatically a real difference in power there and a real power imbalance in any sort of situation you're in with them.
Yeah, completely.
You know, if I was to make a list, an overwhelming majority of them are women, because the experience that you have to go through, and it's been clear to me today, and it's been clear to me from what people have told me, and it's been clear to me for years. It's a different experience, and it's an experience that as a man, you know, I can't live that experience, but I can try my very best to understand it. And I understand, I think, something about the difficulty and the complexity and the horrible nature of it. And, you know, I feel like I'm starting to get a grip on that. And that's, you know, it women are definitely the strongest people in my life. Definitely, I've been surrounded by strong women. You know, like my mum, my sister, you two are definitely.
Aw,
You are
thanks,
incredibly,
Chris.
and I don't say it because I'm trying to be nice, and I'm not saying it because you know, like there'll be men out there and be like, oh, he's just trying to suck up to women. No, 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 that's not it here. I'm saying it because I genuinely believe that you know, you two, the facts that we've been able to sit here and have very personal conversations, you've been able to share with me stories that are really horrible, and you know, so many friends of mine have been really, they've been really brave to tell me these things they've been through. It's so strong and courageous, and I respect that more than I can put into words. I can't do it justice. Um, and I think that men, rather than put women down, could look at this as an example of how to be better, because if you want to be strong, it's not about being, you know, it's not about toxic masculinity. I think spend a little while trying to understand what women go through, and you'll see real strength. To be quite honest with you, I really think that's something I really believe. And the second thing I had was, you know, men go, oh, what can I do? Well, I think we've made it clear that men can challenge their behaviors, learn more, watch more, read more, talk more, you know, and try their best to be better.
I think men need to be comfortable calling out their friends or stop being friends with people who do stuff like this as well.
Yeah, what have you got to lose by calling it out? The worst thing happens is that someone who's a dick is no longer in your life. Well, you're probably better off for it. So, yeah, I really hope that this conversation doesn't end with this podcast, because I think that ideally, you know, men and everyone, but men are responsible for changing the situation, because the status quo isn't good enough. So, you know, this podcast will go out, and you might listen to it and you might nod along and think, oh yeah, well, they're just saying it, and then never do anything more. And if that is you, go back and listen to everything we've just said again, and keep doing it until you realize that the issue is you getting to the end and thinking, I'm all right, I don't have to do anything, because guess what? It's not enough. And also, I just wanted to say to someone who might be listening, a friend of mine who is starting a new job this week, that I hope you do really well. She's a woman, so there you go. It's women's experiences.
Shout out.
She was really quite nervous about it, but I know what, I hope you are going to do amazing at it, because, you know, as I've said, she is an example of someone who is incredibly strong personally and has a lot of time and a lot of empathy for people. And she's going into a job where that is incredibly important, and she is going to be phenomenally good. So good luck to her.
Oh, lovely.
Good luck. I'm not sure which friend this is, but
oh, you don't know.
Oh, okay. But
Good
we
luck,
love
Chris's
you anyway.
friend. I'm sure you'll smash it. And
You're
yes,
gonna smash it.
Right, lots of women are very mentally strong, and in terms of people that are physically strong, we have Katrina, who I'm pretty sure could bench press me. So
yeah, if you're out there wanting to try not all men, we're gonna send Kat round, and she is gonna
sort you
prove
out.
to you that
Seen this girl
women
in
are
action.
fucking strong as fuck.
Scary.
I just want to say thank you to both of you. You know, you're two of my bestest friends in the whole wide world, and I am glad, with Katie, that, you know, she can explain things a lot better than I can, and is the brains of this partnership.
Not at all.
But like, I've have a lot of respect for the pair of you, and with Chris, I think you're doing a great thing by educating yourself and showing to other men that it's okay to do so, and it's not an embarrassing thing, it's actually a cool thing. And both of you, when you leave single life and find someone, they are going to be the luckiest people in the world to have.
Yeah. I mean, I am who I am
like you.
because of the women in my life, and I wouldn't be who I was if women hadn't been around. So, to be honest, when I hear you saying that you think I'm doing a good thing, I would say thank you to the women in my life who have been an amazing influence on me. I'm so grateful for it, and I hope that I will continue to be influenced by women who, as I've said, and I will keep saying it, are some of the strongest people that I know. And Katie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having
I'm
me.
really
It's
glad
been really
that we
cool.
invited you on. No, honestly, I'm really glad we invited you on. I think, we'd love to have you back in the future. I think it's been really great.
That'd be a lot of
having you on.
fun. And it's been really interesting to hear your side of things as well, Chris. So thanks for that, because I know you've got a really sort of varied perspective in terms of being a man, but also having experience with racial discrimination, obviously, and feeling, you understand that feeling of feeling unsafe a lot more than most. So thank you for sort of sharing that with us. It's been really interesting to hear your take on that.
Cuties. Okay. We will be posting information about where you can get help, people you can talk to if you've experienced anything and you want to reach out. We'll post a load of information on our Instagram page. But also,
and if you have anything negative to say, please exercise your right to not say anything at all.
Yes, definitely. But if you want to share your stories or have a chat with us, our DMs are always open, and because there's two of us, we will always get back to you, unless you're being mean, and then we won't. But
I'll just block you. I won't feel any guilt about it.
Yeah, good.
Because you're a
good.
dick, so. If you get blocked by us, then you've really fucked up. Think of it like that.
Yeah, to be fair. I mean,
because Kat will feel bad about it too.
A lot of shit.
Yeah, I feel bad about it. No, I don't know what else there is to say, but we'll post resources. Our DMs are always open, and thank you so much for listening and getting us through to episode 10. Should we do a joint bye?
Right, count us in.
3, 2, 1, bye.
Bye. That's the best one we've ever done.